Hey everyone, thanks for coming. My name is Adam Prem. I work for ServiceNow. I've been working for ServiceNow for the past 8 years in sort of different realms. I was a solution consultant, working for the Navy and Marine Corps team, sales accounts team. Became an SC manager after that, and have just in this past month moved to a new role as the global lead for defense and mission security solutions. We're still figuring out what that means. But what we're doing, and what I'm going to talk to you today, is about some of the things that ServiceNow as a company, as a SaaS company, is doing to create new products and new things for our customers to use, specifically in the defense space. Right? The things that I think of that they could probably use today, but they are definitely going to need to use tomorrow based on geopolitical tensions and things that we're seeing across the globe. Before I started working for ServiceNow, I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton out in San Diego, supporting the NAVWAR program offices, specifically EOC4I. And within there, PMW 150, which does the shipboard applications and solutions. And so a lot of my mindset coming into ServiceNow had to do with sort of how would we ever deploy a SaaS-based technology on a ship. And that's what we're going to talk about. Part of my job at Booz Allen was risk management, so this term unknown unknowns has to do sort of with what we did in the realm of risk management. If you ever follow risk management, right, you're trying to figure out what might happen so that you can understand the outcomes and then work against it, whether that's mitigate or avoid fully. I didn't make up this term, it's been around for a while, but this sort of speaks to, like, from a risk perspective, there are known unknowns, right? We know that our flight might be delayed. We know that we might hit traffic going into work. We've experienced it before. We may experience it today. We may experience it tomorrow. Those are known. We know it's going to happen. The unknown unknowns are the real scary ones, right? Because we don't know what could happen, and therefore we don't know how to even begin to mitigate it. And I think when we were putting this presentation together, it made a lot of sense to me because it brought me back to those days where we're like, how are we supposed to mitigate things that we don't know are going to happen? And I think we are entering sort of this, with the worldwide tensions that we're seeing now, where things are going to pop up out of nowhere. So that's kind of where that title came from. Come on, guys. All right, so Safe Harbor, this is like the most famous slide of any technology vendor ever. But this actually one does make sense. We usually glaze over this one really quickly. But what I'm going to be talking about are more future-looking products, right? These are things that we've been addressing for a number of years, but they're not productized. So we're in the process of doing that, but I want to make sure that when you see images and things like that, we are not promising that we are producing them. We're going to get there. I believe we are. But anyways, Safe Harbor. So what are we going to talk about today? I want to give a general ServiceNow overview for the people in the room that don't know what ServiceNow is. We'll talk about disconnected operations. These are the two mission solutions that we're dealing with in defense today. One is disconnected operations, which is sort of the way that we are addressing D-DIL situations on ship, but it's not just the Navy, right? All the defense agencies have some sort of forward deployed where they have limited bandwidth, and we'll kind of get into how ServiceNow is going to help with that. And then the mission resiliency vision. We'll go into depth around this, but this is kind of, if D-DIL is basically intermittent connection to the cloud or to the internet, right? What happens if the cloud just drops, right? What happens if we don't have, if our defense agencies, all of a sudden there's a massive strike on the internet, they can't get to their cloud instances, they can't get to their data. What do we do to help them with that? And then we'll see if we can do a disconnected operations demo. When I had timed this out, I don't think we'll probably have proper time for it, but I will give you a link. So we have a conference called FedForum. It's in the DC area every year. I think it's in the February or March timeframe. And so we did a demonstration where we showed sort of two connected instances, and you drop the connection and so forth. It's all been recorded. If you're around, I'll be here tomorrow. We can do a demonstration live at the booth at ServiceNow downstairs. All right, eye chart time. I'm not expecting any of you to review this or study it or anything. I'll go through it kind of relatively quickly. But what is ServiceNow? For those that don't know what ServiceNow is, we're a workflow automation platform, a cloud-based workflow automation platform. We have a lot of different products that, if you think of, okay, well, your workflow solution, what are you workflowing? What are you automating? It really depends on the use case. In the defense, we're really well represented across the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, the Intel community is using us quite a bit. The Australians are using us. It's a known commodity across defense agencies globally. But it always comes down to the use case. What are you trying to automate? What are your pain points, right? It's not a point solution. We have to go kind of fishing with a big net because when we talk to customers, it's really about what are the biggest problems that they have. Sometimes those can be, and what most people know us as a ticketing system, right? Everyone's like, oh, ServiceNow is a ticketing system. We've been around since 2004. When we started, we were a ticketing system, right? It was a funny story. We actually created the platform before we created any products, and Wall Street said, no, you got to give a product. You can't just have this platform out there that automates things. You got to give a product. So we came up with ITSM, IT Service Management. It's still our flagship product today, and you know, we're the Gartner leader in there for the last decade or so. But we've grown considerably since, right? I mean, if you look at kind of, I'll go through them very quickly. The technology excellence, again, that's kind of where most people know us from. IT Service Management and all the supporting capabilities for how a help desk runs or how an organization helps automate the process of resolution to technology issues. Operations management, asset management is a huge one. We're doing a lot of work in the defense space with that, as well as security operations. There is an element of customer experience. So when we're talking about defense organizations that treat their military people or their families or their homes as customers, right? There's an element of how do we do field service management, customer service management. We have products out there doing this quite well. Employee experience, Paycom is a customer of ours. They're using HR service delivery for civilian onboarding. We've all, I think, in the room have some sort of sense of what it's like onboarding in the civilian world, right? You got to get the background checks, the CACs, you got to do SARNs, you got to do this, that, and 100 different things before you can walk in the door and be productive. And so we're helping out Paycom in that regard. It also has to do with new products that are coming out, talent development, workplace service delivery, and all this. Operational excellence, I look at their strategic portfolio management. I had a conversation downstairs with a gentleman that was like, I didn't know you guys did any sort of portfolio project program management. Yeah, that's absolutely strategic portfolio management. And that's my background as well. So there is an element of how do we automate the programs and projects to help them identify the three things, right? The holy triangle as far as program management is concerned: cost, schedule, performance. Right? And then finance and supply chain. There's a level of no to low code automation too, so people can use the platform to create their own applications. If it's not a perfect fit for anything that you see up here, we do have the ability to generate your own applications. All of those products, we're trying to get out of the mindset of product-based. We should be a solution-based, right? Because a lot of what we see across the defense agencies are, yes, enterprise asset management is important, but I want my enterprise asset management to talk to security operations, to talk to HR, because they have a play in it, and so forth, right? So it's a little bit like a ping pong ball kind of bouncing around this chart. And that's what we think when we think of mission solutions. It's usually not one product, it's a collection of products. So all those products then are built on a couple of, and this is not an all-inclusive list, of course, but our platform core capabilities. A single data model. This one's actually really important because we're just like any other technology company that when we do acquisitions, like we do several acquisitions a year for technologies that are out there that we say, wow, this could be really good on our platform. Where we're a little bit different though, is when we purchase it, we automatically, we shut it down as far as sales the next day. We don't sell it anymore. We take the time to re-platform it on our code base, and that's how we can do this single data model. We don't do plugins, we don't do bolt-ons or anything like that. We do have store apps that I can talk about that layer on top of our platform. It's a little different. I'm going to skip over predictive and generative AI. Process orchestration. This is what you think with a workflow company, right? We can take a look at when a workflow has been executed thousands and thousands of times. We can look at that and go, when it took this chart, this track on the workflow, the end result took 5 days longer than it should have. And that just might be a way to enhance your workflow is to take a look at that branch and automate it. So we make recommendations on how to make your workflows better. The integration piece is huge because although we do a lot, we have a ton of capability, we also understand, especially in the defense world, that there's not one ring to rule them all. We don't try to do that. So we have out-of-the-box plugins or integrations, flank speed. We're trying to get with PEO Digital today and talk about how Jira, SolarWinds, all the Tanium, Tenable, all the major technologies that are used across defense agencies. So integration is a big piece. I talked about analytics. We are an analytics platform too. We don't necessarily need to bring in an analytics engine to do some of the visualization and data reporting. So we have that in-house, security and compliance. And so just to talk about security and compliance for a minute, because we're a cloud-based company, right? We have our commercial cloud, where a lot of our commercial customers live. We also have an IL4 cloud, which is called our government community cloud. We have a national security cloud, which is an IL5-based cloud that's based on Azure. And we have people all over the world using us in a self-hosted capability. That is what the crux of a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, is the ability that you can take this entire platform that is designed to be in the cloud, and you can put it on-prem or self-hosted wherever you want it to be, and you lose next to no capability. There's one or two type things that we fix along the way, because the way that we design our data centers are there to, there's other utilities that these products might use, but I'm talking about like 99% of the platform works perfectly self-hosted. So when we talk about a cloud-based company, this is our data center sets. We're really investing heavily in regulated markets, right? And so obviously from a US defense perspective, that was the first regulated market for ServiceNow. The data center pair for our IL4 cloud is Culpeper, Virginia, and Miami, Florida. Our NSC IL5 cloud is based, I think, in DC and Texas. Again, that's based in Azure. So it's a SaaS-based offering in Azure. We did not design and build our own IL5. But then you're going to see over in Dubai, they've got a regulated market. Singapore has their own cloud, right? Because there's data sovereignty rights and everything else. But just some general metrics as far as what our data centers look like. Now, we talked all that to say, we're talking cloud-based automation, everything's in the cloud. The next two solutions that we're proposing are situations that largely defense governments and agencies are going to be dealing with if the cloud goes away or if it's denied, right? Disconnected operations is one of them. I think everyone probably in this room understands what D-DIL is, if they've not heard it. There's another term coming out that's similar, but I forget what it is, right? It starts with a C. What is it?
C-DIL.
C-DIL. What is it? Can you say it?
Contested.
Contested.
Disrupted and limited operations.
Is that the more global term?
That's the one that I hear the most now.
Okay, I'm going to start using that. C-DIL. I was not aware of it. But for those that aren't aware of what it is, right? This is rooted in Navy, but it's pertinent to all agencies, like I said earlier. But my background is sort of how did ships go River City and stop having connections to anything, right? So forgive the ship to shore, but that's just kind of the graphics that I use over the years. But as you can imagine, right, D-DIL situations can come from intentional or unintentional means, right? It could be intentional in the sense of, hey, we're running an exercise, we're going to turn off all communications, we need to be able to operate independently on ourselves and that sort of thing. It could be intentional or unintentional. It could be something broke, or comms link went down. It can be weather, right? You could have a ship in the Middle East or in the Indian Ocean in the middle of a hurricane, right? They're not going to get satellite communication out there. So they're in a position where they cannot connect to the cloud, and they probably are not connecting to any other, possibly maybe ships, so we can talk about that. But what do we do? How are we helping the sailors, the Marines, the airmen, the soldiers that are out there with no connection? How can we help them? And a lot goes back to that disconnected, that self-hosted mode. This is just, we're going to kind of go flip through sort of normal communication, right? Ship to ship, ServiceNow doesn't really play in that space, right? That's kind of a lot of, that's line of sight. You're looking at like HF and UHF, and then they do like VHF if you're not line of sight. But mostly we're talking SATCOM communication to a customer's or area, or and then direct to our cloud. So this is the way it should work, right? And so we've got a couple ships just represented here. Now let's say that George Washington has to go D-DIL, right? They got to go River City for whatever reason. The Iwo Jima is fine. They're going to continue to use SATCOM. But what are we doing about that George Washington? Because it could be, right, it could be hours, it could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months. We don't know, right? But how are we allowing the sailors to continue their work in all those little boxes that we had in that eye chart slide? If I'm using it for HR, maybe I'm using it for cyber defense, maybe I'm using it for IT ticketing, right? We gotta keep our systems maintained. How are we doing that? Well, this is where ServiceNow comes in with the self-hosted mode. So we've proven this out, basically. We're on the Iwo Jima today. Sorry, I should have put that graphic down there, but we deployed a self-hosted implementation of ServiceNow on the Iwo Jima to capture, of all things, chaplain requests. So the chaplains, the men and women of faith that are on ship to help with a number of things, right? They have all sorts of exercises or things that they do as far as counseling or ceremonial support. And they have an OpNav mandate to record what they do on the ship. And that's got to get back to the shore at some point. Well, the chaplains came to us and said, we can't do this. They had a SharePoint site that they were posting this, but they were always disconnected. They could never get to that SharePoint. So they were recording all their services and time on pen and ink or pen and paper, and then they'd have to get back to shore to punch it into SharePoint, and it was just a complete mess for them. It never made sense. And so we deployed ServiceNow on the ship where they have access to a self-hosted ServiceNow instance where they capture all that. Well, whether if they're in not a D-DIL situation, great. Everything's flowing to the cloud-based instance where it's getting collected in the NSC or GCC. If they are in a disconnected mode, it just uses basically a spool table. The records stay on the ship. Everything can be self-contained. And then once a connection is identified, it can start replicating information out. This solution has seen a couple different iterations. It went from being kind of a garage project that, the technology has always supported it. It's more just kind of figuring out how the pieces fit, to where we did a better demonstration using a little bit more modern our own modern technology, to the point now when we're looking at, we have something called Hermes Message Bus, which is based on Kafka. So it's it's a lot of data, faster than an API. So we're looking at that as kind of the next generation of ServiceNow. Okay, mission resiliency. I'm just doing a time check here. Mission resiliency is, so this actually came from some vision from our DoD Vice President of Sales. He kind of is thinking, he was an ex-Marine, is a Marine. Once a Marine, always Marine. Sorry, I don't the 2 Marines there. 3, probably. Was kind of this idea like, okay, the tensions right now with China and Russia, right? There are thoughts that one of the first attacks that can happen is they cut internet cables globally, right? They can just kind of do that. They can take out satellites. They can make our life a living hell as far as connecting into the cloud and getting our daily work done. And so he's kind of thinking, how do I take the data that's stored in the cloud and give it to a customer so that if that were to happen, right, they can continue working with all their data, all their workflows, or whatever workflow and data they choose to be done. And so we're doing that with this idea of mission resiliency. Essentially, honestly, it's more than a backup, but that's really what it is. We're talking about it in terms of being an insurance policy. If the end user down here, right, is using their local data center to reach our cloud, right, and all of a sudden, that cloud connection goes away, what we're doing is we're creating a data replication over to, and it can be anywhere, right? We're calling it a tertiary site. It can be in their data center, it can be in someone else's data center, but it automatically copies that data over dynamically and constantly, just like we would do in a situation with our own cloud, where we can then start routing traffic to that data center, and they have no then reliance on the cloud. So that's kind of one of the things that we've been working on. We're trying to capture demand for this, but we're also trying to get ideas. Right? We're trying to think about, hey, are we replicating everything? Do customers want to replicate everything? Do they want to say, there was a term an Army general was throwing out. He said, do we go on a data diet where we say, I got all that data in the cloud. The stuff I really, really, really need from a mission perspective are these 5 workflows, these tables, these user bases and things like that. So we're kind of taking a look at that as far as how we go about productizing this, if we go about productizing this. That one does take, the disconnected operations is actually leveraging a lot of the technology in the platform already. We're not doing anything new. Like I said, we're just stringing certain aspects of the platform together to create more capability. This one, the mission resiliency, actually does take, we would have to do a redesign, not a complete redesign, but we have to talk to the data center folks as far as how are we making that data replication to a tertiary site. Yeah, no time for a demo. I'm almost kind of out my time here, but if you would like to see one, go ahead and scan that one. Again, this is a recording from our Fed forum that was in February or March of last year. And it shows basically what it would look like. It's pretty great. I mean, it's got two instances. We show kind of replication of data. We cut the internet. The one instance can kind of keep running as it is, and then when the connection is restored, we take all that data and move it over so it's back in sync. If you have any questions, I'll hang out for sure. But if you want to come visit us, we're at booth 1507. If you need to email me if you want more information, you can leverage that QR code.